So hello and welcome to the Journal of Korean Studies Author Spotlight Series. My name is Jack Davey. I'm the managing editor of the journal, and we come to you from the journal's editorial office at George Washington University Institute for Korean Studies, or GWIX. And today I'm joined not just by two scholars who are authors, JKS authors, but they're also the guest editors of our fall special issue, Textual Materiality in Korea, Premodern to Postmodern. They are Dr. Ksenia Chizhova, who is an assistant professor of Korean literature and cultural studies at Princeton University. Welcome, Dr. Chizhova.
Thank you, Jack.
And Dr. Olga Fedorenko, who is an associate professor in the Anthropology Department of Seoul National University. Welcome, Dr. Fedorenko, and thank you.
Hello, thank you for the introduction.
Yeah, thank you so much, both not only for making the time for this interview, but for putting this wonderful issue together. That I had a lot of fun working with you on this. So to briefly introduce this issue, the special issue that Dr. Chizhova and Dr. Fedorenko have put together for us is a really special one, I think, and it really embodies the interdisciplinary potential of Korean studies, and it sort of brings together so many fascinating papers that span, everything from pre-modern to modern to contemporary Korea. And I'll quote briefly from their introduction to the issue. The special issue seeks to ground the study of Korea, past and present, in the materiality of texts, while refining its theorization and historicization. Considered together, the articles in this interdisciplinary special issue bring into the limelight the complex linkages between the textual and the material, reframe textual artifacts as complex socio-material phenomena, and raise questions about specific entanglements of texts, media, bodies, and practices in their cultural historical contexts. Sounds good to me. So I'd really just like to begin by asking you both where the idea for this special issue came from and how did it come together?
Well, I guess it all started when Ksenia was given a talk at Royal Asiatic Society in Seoul, I guess at that point on her forthcoming book. So she was talking about calligraphy, women's writing, and I guess your work deals a lot with embodiment, but materiality kind of is a very related question. So after the talk, we started talking, and I was quite fascinated with her approaches because I was kind of interested in very similar topics, but in a very different time, like in contemporary Korea, how like those issues of materiality work out after the internet. So yes, we started talking and kept talking, and next thing we know, an issue came out.
Yeah, so if I might add, I think, right, we started that conversation after my talk, and then it was kind of a very natural, as Olga said, alignment of interest. And I think being in this together kind of, at least for me, it really gave me courage to reach out to the wider audience because, of course, Olga is an anthropologist. She works on contemporary topics. And I was kind of looking for chances to step out of pre-modern Korea, on which my first book is based. So I think between the two of us, there was really this synergy of theoretical approaches, our knowledges of different fields, and really it was really a lot of fun working together and with the JKS as well. That was wonderful.
Yeah, I think that really shines through in the contributors you managed to get for this issue. We've got historians, anthropologists, cultural scholars, people working on modern stuff, people working on very early stuff in my period in early Korea. So yeah, it's really amazing how this topic seems to be able to link everybody together in a compelling way. And so I guess that brings me really to my second question is, if I can ask you to unpack your conception of textual materiality or materiality in general, are you approaching this from a specific disciplinary perspective, or what are you invoking when you say textual materiality?
So if maybe I might start talking about this topic, Olga and I wanted to kind of move away from textual interpretation and actually position textual materiality, which is the materiality of the infrastructure of textual transmission, the materiality of signifier, and the materiality of embodied practices that are involved in textual reading or creation of texts, right? So we actually wanted to position this textual materiality as a conceptual issue that would allow us to reach this longue durée perspective that would bring together authors working on entirely different topics, right? Because, for example, when we look into Joseon Dynasty Korea, one of the popular issues that is being discussed is the relationship between the cosmopolitan literary Chinese culture and the local vernacular culture, right? We kind of wanted to move away from this textual criticism and look, so what was the infrastructure? What were the media? What was the mediality? What did bodies do when they encountered texts?
I guess on my end, I'm coming to this question from a perspective of materiality of media. And the media I'm primarily thinking about is paper media, and generally that's texts. But again, kind of like more focusing on media technologies and how they enable certain meanings, like kind of like this mixture of technology and content and how they come together. So again, it was interesting to talk to people for whom conversation about technology is not automatically conversation about digital media and digital technology. So just kind of bringing together old and new technologies, and I guess like old new technologies, that was very exciting for me and kind of helped me to think through this new research on materiality of media.
Yeah, that was also very exciting for me as an archaeologist, looking at technology from a completely different sort of perspective and seeing just how much relevance there is there in terms of methodology and theorization. So I really appreciated it just for my own work. Thinking about sort of materiality as a interdisciplinary topic, and you're looking at Korea from a variety of different perspectives. How do you think focusing on Korea for this topic contributes to the ongoing conversation in different disciplines about materiality or textual materiality? What is the advantage of looking at it from a Korean studies perspective?
I thought about this question, and I have to say that I don't think there is anything special about Korea, right? I think if we look into mediality and materiality of writing in different contexts, we will find some exciting moments to think about. So I think for me, what is special is actually, if I might say so, is the way we constructed our issue, right? So as we already mentioned, we brought into conversation scholars that work on pre-modern contexts. For example, we have Dr. Seung-Hae Lee, who talks about the materiality of Buddhist inscriptions that are buried in the abdominal cages of the Buddhist statues in medieval Korea. And then finally, we have, of course, Dr. Dae-Hye Kim, who talks about the sci-fi fiction and the new audience, a new mode of creating sci-fi fiction through increasing computerization of South Korea, right? So for us, I think what is special is not so much Korea, at least for me, but actually bringing together scholars that work on completely divergent topics, who use completely divergent approaches and who can still have a conversation. And if I might also say, we actually, while we were putting the issue together, we actually asked so we asked authors to comment on other authors' papers, and we actually tried to pair people who are just as far as possible from each other. And so for me, it's actually that kind of conversation. We were very deliberate with Olga about this. We wanted everyone to talk to each other. So I would say that for us, this was the special moment of the issue.
Yeah, I guess it was kind of similar for me, but maybe like one thing to add to that there's nothing particularly special about Korean media, but there is a very particular local context. So kind of being familiar with media technologies, media practices, kind of textual practices, material practices in Korea in different periods, like kind of bringing people together to bring like those different pieces together, that was very interesting. And again, like those comments made us see interesting connections between papers, which we didn't notice earlier.
Yeah, I think if nothing else, Korea serves as a great excuse to bring together these very disparate approaches, techniques, topics, and certainly that was my experience reading, an article like Dr. Hee-Sang Cho's contribution, where he's talking about Chosun funeral texts and studying a very classically archaeological topic, but doing it from a completely different perspective than I would ever think. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of value there. Speaking of the articles themselves, are there any authors or findings or contributions you'd like to highlight for us here?
It's kind of like a really tricky question because, of course, you want to highlight them all because they're all so interesting, and again, like they're all kind of so different, so it's kind of tricky. I guess for me, I was most fascinated with papers which deal with topics which are quite far from what I do, at the same time resonate in some ways. So I guess I had a lot of fun reading different versions of Deborah Solomon's paper on portable mimeograph Tingsapan, because that's kind of like new technology in colonial period. And I guess I'm working like kind of new textual technology in contemporary times. So kind of teasing out those parallels was interesting. I also felt like I learned a lot from Devon Chong's paper about contemporary literary scene. It's like very informative for that, and yeah.
And if I might add, I really enjoyed reading a paper by Dr. Anna Jongwon Lee. I was actually fascinated that she found the genre of writing that we probably wouldn't think so much about, and yet it was ubiquitous in the articulation of South Korean foreign as well as internal policy, right? So she's looking at leaflets that were dispatched across the South-North Korean border that would address messages of consumption to the North Korean audience, consumption that didn't quite exist in the South and was simply an aspirational construct through which the South Korean government broadcasted its superior economic and political model. And I also really enjoyed reading the paper by Dr. Shin Jong-soo, who actually discusses the kind of the cosmopolitan networks that existed between the Joseon Dynasty Korean and Chinese scholars who were engaged in kind of textual archaeological projects and who actually collected information from existing stele, exchanged it, and kind of tried to articulate their particular claims on the knowledge production through this mutual exchange. So overall, I think for me, personally, it really opened my horizons. I'm actually using several of the articles in my graduate course this fall. I'm just hoping the issue comes out soon enough for me to actually put the articles onto the online resource. So yeah.
Yes, we're all hoping that happens, but we're all at the mercy of the editorial publishing printing process. I guess sort of in that vein, given all these fascinating papers, but rather disparate chronologically and topically, we've talked about sort of the contribution of this issue to other disciplines, but what about to Korean studies? What do you hope Korean studies scholars will take away from this, and where should we as sort of a field go from here?
If I might say for me, and that's again not new, we already mentioned it, I find it fascinating how Korean field has this watershed divide. Nothing must cross the boundary of modern and pre-modern. 1910 or 1876, whatever is the boundary you draw around modernity, it's actually, in a very strange way, it still remains an absolute. Right? Maybe I'm exaggerating, but I think it's more or less true. So I really hope that we start crossing that boundary and do more kind of conceptually oriented scholarship. At least that was the fun part of it for me.
Yeah, I guess like this kind of cross time period conversation doesn't happen that often. So that is nice. Also, generally, I just would like to see more scholarship and kind of textual materiality, like because we do have a lot of interesting work about like media content and media technology, but kind of bringing those things together and see how they work together. I don't think there is that much of that. So kind of hoping to inspire people to do that kind of research.
I think you will. There's so many fascinating papers in here, and I'm already inspired just having read all the the earlier versions of these. And like I said, I'm going to be stealing some methodological aspects from certain of these papers, like Jung Soo Shim and Kwi-Sang Cho, especially. I think their sort of approach to ancient Korea, or looking at funerals and texts, is really fascinating. So Thank you so much for
Yeah.
bringing them all together. I guess I think we still have a bit of time, so I want to give you the opportunity to introduce your own papers in this issue. One thing I found interesting about both your contributions is that, you know, beyond their very sophisticated and interesting examinations of textual materiality in different contexts, they sort of also shine a light on some aspects of Korea that seem very ubiquitous but ignored. And so in your case, Olga, I've been to SNU and I've seen those big Taejabo posters and completely ignored them. and in the case of North Korean calligraphy, that font, the Chongbong style font, is so everywhere in North Korea, but it's not something I've ever focused on myself. So I'd like to give you the opportunity to sort of briefly introduce your own papers.
I guess I'll go first. So in the case of Taejabo, basically, I was surprised to find them on campus, like at Seoul National University when I got here, because, well, 21st century Korea, everyone is using cell phones for everything. And then when something happens, it is like this very, elementary, very old-fashioned medium that somehow becomes important. So that was just a kind of personal puzzle, like, okay, why do they do that? And that was the beginning of this research. And originally I actually wanted to do like more ethnographic paper with students who write those Taejabo. But when I started doing research, I realized that there isn't much written about them since that kind of 80s period when it was the main medium protest. So it kind of became more of like, I guess, slightly historical project to track how the Taejabo came to the current day and why they are still relevant. So the paper basically tries to explain that relevance of this paper medium in the internet age by arguing that it kind of has adapted and its materialities, specifically its kind of size and its spatiality, like its capacity to take place on campus, like the capacity to be present, that what makes it relevant today. So I guess kind of it's the gist of my paper.
And for me, so again, I was very excited to start a very new project in such a wonderful company. I think I would have been afraid to do it all on my own. So my paper concerns North Korean calligraphy. I began working on calligraphy in the Joseon Dynasty context, where the so-called palace style developed as the first attempt to aestheticize vernacular Korean writing and incorporate it into the culture of the elites in the palace and also outside the palace among the aristocratic families. And then I kept staring at this North Korean posters, and I was thinking, this is palace style calligraphy. It's just slightly modified, but this is exactly where it's coming from. So after staring at these posters long enough, I finally mustered my courage. And actually, in this paper, I consider North Korean calligraphy as a technology of building political incorporation and political intimacy between the people and the leaders. I find, for me, focus on calligraphy is almost on statement of my own methodology as a pre-modernist scholar moving into contemporary, kind of more modern studies, because, North Korean art has been a popular topic, but no one thinks about calligraphy because I think it feels like somehow a pre-modern practice. And here I kind of find this juncture between the aesthetic continuity that comes from pre-modern period and that becomes inflected in the specific North Korean context. So I kind of first try to understand what does calligraphy mean for the North Korean mass mobilization apparatus. And then I actually trace this aesthetic genealogy from palace style to the so-called Chongbong style, that it becomes kind of attached to the image of Kim Jong-il's birth mother, Kim Jong-suk, who is said to be the originator of this practice. So I kind of hope to trace again this continuity across modern and pre-modern divide, and also add kind of a new moment into our thinking about North Korean art, North Korean mass mobilization practices.
Fantastic. Thank you both very much for introducing your own papers. I think that's where our interview will come to a close. Is there anything final you'd like to say about the issue or your own work?
No, maybe that it was just like a lot of fun putting it together and working with the authors. And we are hoping that readers will have a lot of fun reading it.
Yeah, and really so much thanks to Jack, who was the most amazing editor, who was there when we had questions, when we needed help. Again, just want to say that it was such a smooth journey with Olga, who is the most wonderful co-editor possible, and with Jack on the side of JKS, and of course, Jisoo Kim, the editor of the journal. So thank you guys so much for having us.
Yes, oh, well, you're welcome. I would minimize my own contribution, but agree that this went much more smoothly than most special issue preparations do. So thank you both for being great guest editors and putting out this amazing issue. So the issue itself is available both online and in print, and you can find all the articles and details of how to access them on the journal's website, which is linked in the description to this video. And yeah, I just like to, I guess, end by saying thank you both to Dr. Ksenia Chizhova and Dr. Olga Fedorenko, and thank everyone for watching this video. Please check out the issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.